Okay, good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everyone. My name is Claire Bradley and I am the Director of Irish Studies here at the International Institute of Genealogical Studies. Before we get into today's class, I just want to check, does anyone have any questions about current coursework or any other queries that they want to discuss with the group? Usually not, but I'll give you a moment. No? Okay. So what I wanted to do for our last Irish virtual meeting of the year is talk about Christmas. Because why not? It's coming. We can't avoid it now. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. Okay, I hope everyone can see the slideshow okay. Just let me know if you can't. So Christmas in Ireland, I'm going to talk about a bit about old and a bit about new as well, or current to say. So in Ireland, Christmas in the past, and certainly in the past, really began in November with the making of the Christmas cake, which would be done several weekends in advance of Christmas so that it would have time to marinate and get all yummy. So people would make their Christmas cake in advance. Christmas cake is a rich fruit cake, and in Ireland it's covered with marzipan and then with icing. Some people use icing that looks like snow, so it's got like sort of little tufts in it, and some people use just a glazed icing. I think you call it frosting in the States and maybe in Canada as well. And that's white, and then we usually decorate it with little sort of Christmas ornaments, like there might be a little tree on it or a little Santa or something like that. We had reindeer on ours in our house and a Merry Christmas sort of stencil that you would press into the top of the cake. They wouldn't be that elaborate, of course, in the 19th century, but they still would have made a fruitcake. One of the big things in the past was that at Christmas you would get letters from the emigrant branches of your family. And I want to highlight two places where you can look at, some people called it the American letter. And that's just because the majority of immigrants were in America, but they were, of course, in Canada, in Britain, and further afield like Australia and New Zealand. So there are two large collections of Christmas, or sorry, not just Christmas, but letters from immigrants and to immigrants that are out there on the internet. And I wanted to mention them. The first one is the Irish Immigrant Database, and the website is this dipam.ac.uk.ied. It's part of a larger website that has other things on it. And the letters on this website, they mainly feature from Ulster locations. So there's not so much for the other 26 counties. So the 9 counties of Ulster. It's not just Northern Ireland, but and the fault with it is that they are not transcribed. They're only transcribed, so you don't see the original people's handwriting. And sometimes the transcriber hasn't been able to make out some of the handwriting, and they've just left a space. So sometimes you can figure out what's missing from context. The other one is a newer database called Imrecha, which is the Irish word for migration. And it is hosted by the University of Galway. And this lovely image here I've taken from there. This is the collection of a very noted American academic called Kirby Miller, who wrote a particularly famous, famous in academic terms, book about Irish migration called Emigrants and Exiles, which is quite academic. I've read it, and I have to admit sometimes it put me to sleep. But sometimes that's what I wanted it to do, so that's okay. But it's very good. I mean, it's something to dip into rather than something to read cover to cover, which was perhaps my mistake. And this collection, when he was researching that book, which would have been in the 1970s, I think it was published in 1980. He's still alive though. he got letters from families and made copies of them, and then obviously gave them back the originals. But he continued to collect after that time. So it's a very extensive collection. And just earlier this year, it went online, hosted by the University of Galway. And so not everything is an image. Some of it is transcriptions again, but there's a very extensive collection. You can search both of these by location, by name, this sort of thing. So you can even just do sort of a keyword search. So if you wanted to do one for Christmas, for example, this letter I found by searching for Christmas, and it's from an Irish man to his brother who's in America in 1879. And they're talking about, you see you can just make out the word Christmas there in it, and he's saying that he expects him home for Christmas. Okay, so the other big thing that happens before Christmas in Ireland, it is sort of officially begins on the 8th of December, which is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception in the Catholic Church. And this, because it was a holy day, in the past, certainly in the 20th century, everybody got a day off school, because the vast majority of schools in Ireland were run by the Catholic Church, and that's still actually the case, certainly at primary school level. And so you would get the day off school, and many people who were from the country would come to Dublin that day to do their Christmas shopping. And in Dublin, where I'm from, we used to say that the culchies, that's what we call people from the country. It's a slightly derogatory, but also slightly diminutive term for people from the country, which has an unknown origin. We would say, oh, the culchies are up today. So we would avoid going into Dublin to do shopping because there was just too many people in the city that day. A former colleague of mine had her birthday on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, the 8th of December, and her children, when they were small, thought that they got the day off school because it was their mother's birthday, which I love. So this was always a big thing. So these are the two things before Christmas that really are relevant. Now, in the modern era, Christmas practically begins before Halloween, which is terribly, terribly annoying. And one of the big modern Christmas things is that there's a famous talk show in Ireland called The Late Late Show. It's been running since the early 1960s. And in many ways, quite controversial and progressive in its time. And in early December, they always do a toy show. And the toy show, it originally was founded as a way to showcase toys for parents and adults who might like to buy things for children. And it would feature small children coming on and reviewing, a book or a game or a doll or something like that. And it has evolved into this massive extravaganza. And now the whole country watches the toy show en masse. It'd be one of the biggest TV events of the year in Ireland. And people tweet about it, or they talk about it on other social media and enjoy it. And the kids, so it was on last night. So very much Ireland is now like, okay, Christmas is on because the toy show has happened. So that is in the modern world. So then on Christmas Eve, traditionally, people might go to midnight mass, which is not, it is erroneously named. It's not usually at midnight. It's usually at about 9 o'clock. And that would be a mass that would have a lot of hymns, Christmas carols at it. There might be special children events as part of it. And then everyone would come home and they would hang their stockings. That was traditionally what would be done. People would decorate their houses with holly and ivy. In the past, holly berries bloom in December in Ireland, or at least they do traditionally due to climate change. I did see a holly bush in bloom in the summertime, which is just wrong. Now, people believed that animals had the power of human speech on Christmas Eve in the past, but that if humans heard it, they would be bad luck for them. So I don't know how this evolved, but I found this in the Dukas collection, and I've talked to you before about the Dukas collection, which is the schools project that was conducted in the late 1930s in Ireland, where children aged between about 10 and 14 were to collect a story from an older member of their community, and they would write it down in their very nicest handwriting, and then it would be in a big book belonging to their school, which would go into the National Folklore Collection. And it's a beautiful project to read. Nearly all of it is transcribed at this point by volunteers. Some of it was done in Irish as well. And I actually don't have the slide there on the if you just, I'm going to put it into the chat. So if you just Google Dukas and schools collection in Ireland, you will find it. And it is indexed by name, by place, and you can also just do searches for words like Christmas or fairies or folklore. You know, there's lots and lots of different categories in it. Something else we did on Christmas Eve was to put a candle in the window, and you do still see this in Ireland. And there's a few different reasons. Some traditions are to say that it is to welcome Joseph and Mary, or to welcome travelers in general. It also, I read this in one place, and it didn't have any sources for it, but I liked the symbolism of it. It was to symbolize a safe place for priests to perform mass in penal times. So you would have heard me talk before about the penal laws in Ireland and why they are such an obstacle for genealogical research, because Catholics were not free to practice their religion. And in the 18th century, they were at their height, and it wouldn't have been allowed to say a mass. So the idea of the candle in the window was, you can come in here, you can say a mass here, everyone will be safe. They also lit a Yule log, which would come from older, more Celtic times, a midwinter festival. And today you do see Yule log cakes as well, though we don't like those. There's one other thing that we did on Christmas Eve in the past, and it absolutely doesn't exist in the modern day, and you'll know why when I explain what it is. The idea was that you left the doors open on Christmas Eve when you went to bed. And this was to welcome in the spirits of family members who had died during the year. I'm amazed to hear that we did this in such a cold country. But nowadays you wouldn't be leaving your front door wide open at night for any reason at all. So that one is definitely one of the past, but a nice idea. So moving on to Christmas Day then. On Christmas Day, in the past, it was all about religion and food. And now it's all about different types of religion and food. So you would go to mass, or if you were a Church of Ireland, you would go to a service in your own church. And obviously we have Santa Claus in Ireland, so he would come during the night, the children would get their presents. It would be traditional to have your dinner mid-afternoon on Christmas Day. And in the past, there would then be sport afterwards. So people would play football, by which I mean GAA, which is Irish football, or they might play soccer. We don't have American football in Ireland except on a very minor level. So people would play those sorts of things. We also don't have a lot of snow in Ireland, so ice-related sports are not commonplace at all. We do get snow, but it only tends to stick in the Midlands because of the North Atlantic drift that goes around Ireland. It keeps up all the harbours nice and free of ice, and it means that if we do get a bit of snow, it's quite unexpected, and everyone kind of sits around and scratches their head and says, I don't know what to do with this. We don't have any snow plows. We'll just have to stay at home. And we also have crackers, which are paper toys that you pull apart, and there's a little plastic toy inside it and a joke, which is terrible, and then a hat that you wear at your Christmas dinner. So everybody pulls crackers with each other, and they're usually absolute nonsense, but it is a part of the thing. One of the things that is in modern times, until very recently, almost no shops were open on Christmas Day in Ireland. So you might get your local shop opening for an hour after Mass to sell milk and bread, and that would be it. And there would be almost no public transport running that day as well. So it is a day that if you go out and about, you only see people on foot. And it also causes a massive run on the shops on Christmas Eve, because people panic. What if we can't buy any food tomorrow? I mean, it's only one day, but there is a hilarious thing where people panic about this. Of course, in the modern era, we have lots of lovely immigrants in Ireland who aren't Christians, and they don't celebrate Christmas. And so I have often enjoyed having a taxi ride home from my mother's house to my own, ferried by a Muslim taxi driver or an Indian taxi driver or something like that now. So all hail immigrants. It's wonderful that we can actually have this nowadays. It's actually illegal to sell alcohol on Christmas Day in Ireland as well. So there's no pubs open. And this is something that is very unusual, I realise. And even in England, even in Britain, they would have the pubs open on Christmas Day. And I've often heard of friends who was over at somebody's house at Christmas in Britain, and we went to the pub, and it's just so strange for us because you literally can't do that. In fact, only quite recently, in about 4 years ago, that also applied on Good Friday every year as well, which was always a mess. Originally, when that law came in, it applied on St. Patrick's Day, but quite quickly they went, "Oh, we're not going to do that on St. Patrick's Day, because it is the pinnacle of Irish tourism. So a lot of people come to Ireland on St. Patrick's Day, so they realise we have to be able to sell alcohol that day. So they repealed that, but the Christmas one stays, and actually." It's not such a big deal. I don't mind it. It's only one day, and you can, if you're so inclined, you just stock up for that day. So let's come on to the food. In the past, it would have been a day when people actually ate meat. In the 19th century and before that, it wouldn't have been that common where you had meat on a daily basis or even a weekly or monthly basis. So this would be a time of the year when they would make an effort to have some kind of meat. So the traditional dinner in Ireland is turkey and ham with stuffing, which could either be just herbs and onions, or it could also have sausage meat in it, which is my preferred, and then vegetables. And the traditional vegetables would be things like Brussels sprouts and carrots. Nowadays, it expands to anything you can think of, parsnips and broccoli and so on. And there'd always be at least two types of potato, at least two. So you might have mashed potato, you might have roast potatoes, and so on. And then Christmas desserts, very important. Christmas cake, I already mentioned. We also have Christmas pudding, which I feel is really the same thing as Christmas cake, but apparently I would be shot if I said that publicly. For Christmas pudding, and when people are making Christmas pudding, the tradition is that everybody has a stir of the mixture for good luck. And then Christmas pudding is set alight when it's served, so it's got a flame on it. And then there's mince pies, which again, very similar, in context of Christmas cake and Christmas pudding. And the reason that these sorts of desserts became prominent at Christmas is, of course, that they're all things that are preserves. They're dried fruit and so on, and they're soaked in alcohol, which keeps them for longer. So, when they didn't have refrigeration, when they didn't have ways to keep things fresh, these were things that lasted a long time, and that's how they evolved into being Christmas foods. But we also have something called trifle, and I don't know if you have trifle, so I'll just explain what that is. It's kind of sponge and jelly. Well, we call it jelly. I think you call it jello. Mixed together, and then there's whipped cream and custard. So custard and then cream on top with sprinkles on it, and there'd be sherry in it as well. So lots of people really like that, and make a massive bowl of trifle that you just sort of scoop out. It's a kind of a wet dessert, and people like that as well. I don't like any of those. Mince pies are the only thing I like there, so I always find something else to eat. There's no shortage of food, thank goodness. Okay, so that's Christmas food. And then I want to come on to what we call St. Stephen's Day in Ireland. So the first thing to say is that we don't call it Boxing Day in Ireland. That's nothing to do with us. We never have called it Boxing Day, and we never will. So we call it St. Stephen's Day, but quite often the tradition is in Ireland that you add a number of S's, because there's already a load of S's in St. Stephen's Day. And so you might end up saying something like Stevens's Day as a joke. And last year I saw the British ambassador to Ireland doing a tweet where he wished everyone a happy St. Stephen's Day, and he put in about 15 extra ES's at the end. And everyone was like, okay, you're welcome here now, you've got it, you haven't said Boxing Day. So what are these guys with the straw on their heads, you're wondering? Tell me about this, Claire. So these are wren boys, and this is a mad tradition. So in the past, men and boys would go hunting a wren, the little bird, on St. Stephen's Day. And the tradition was that whoever killed it would get good luck for the year. So there's a lot of traditions at Christmas that are about getting good luck for the next year. So they would, after they've hunted the wren and they've killed it, in the past, I stress there's no birds being killed today in this tradition. They would parade around dressed up in straw like this, with the dead wren in a box. So they would display the box to show everyone that they'd done the thing. And then the idea was they went around the doors in the neighborhood and they would knock on them and they would collect food and drinks and they would sing songs and they would tell jokes. Now you do actually still see this happening, mainly in the west of Ireland now, but it's not unusual to see it in the east coast as well. So this is an example in the modern era of men dressed up as wren boys, and it's always the men who do it. This is some in Dingle in County Kerry a few years ago. And they actually do this in the Isle of Man as well. Again, we've no idea where this tradition comes from. Some say it's part of Celtic mythology, but I think that's the sort of thing that we say when we don't really know what it is. It's like when archaeologists find something they don't know what it is and they say, oh, it must be to do with a ritual. We've no idea. Okay, so the last bit I want to talk about is something that's called Nollaig. And that is the Irish for Women's Christmas. And this is the 6th of January. And the 6th of January is also the Epiphany, which is the day that the three wise men visited the baby Jesus. So that's the date in the Christian calendar. And it's also known as the 12th day of Christmas or 12th night. And you also hear it known as Little Christmas. But in Ireland, we call it Nollaig. And this is Women's Christmas. And it's a day which in the past and in the modern era acknowledges that women do most of the work in the home. And the idea is that they get that day off, just that one day now. We wouldn't want to be giving them what we call in Ireland notions. Just one day off. And they can put their feet up. The men do the housework for the day. They probably don't do it as well, of course. And women can go off and make social calls. And this is traditionally when you eat the last of the Christmas food. This is also the day that you're allowed to take your Christmas decorations down. Again, if you do it before that, apparently it's unlucky. Well, I'm here to tell you that I've been taking my Christmas decorations down on New Year's Day for many years now, and I've been grand. So I'm not concerned about the bad luck that I would receive for leaving. I just feel Christmas is over once it's the new year. So it is also worth noting that in 1839, the night of the 5th, 6th of January was an enormous storm that happened in Ireland. A huge storm in which hundreds of people were killed. The roofs were blown off houses. Massive destruction happened. The economic fallout from it was so great that we actually consider it a contributory factor to the famine, which didn't happen for another 6 years. And so the night of the big wind is also the 6th of January. And it was such a bad storm that they considered that there must have been some supernatural element in it. So a lot of things in to do with Christmas or in general, anything traditional in Ireland, we think about whether fairies could have been involved in it or whether there was some sort of supernatural element that did we displease someone in the sky. And so they did consider that supernatural. I've mentioned the big wind in the context before of the census to you because apparently one of the questions they asked people, sorry, not the census, the old age pension, one of the questions they asked people to prove that they were old enough to claim the pension, which was that you had to be 70 in 1908 or you had to be 70 and it came in, the act was 1908. They asked people, did they remember the big wind? As a way to check because they didn't have any birth certificates. But I always think that that's a really flawed mechanism because you could just know about the big wind. You might not remember it. And certainly if you were 70, you would have been very small then, although it was such a terrifying, hurricane winds, very unusual in Ireland to have that sort of weather, that it would definitely stand out in your mind. All right. They are all of the things I wanted to tell you about Christmas. I'm going to stop the screen share and I would love to hear anything you have to say about what I've been telling you. Did you know any of those traditions? Are any of them new to you? And have you heard of other ones that you want to share with the group? No, you guys are also silent. Next year, I'm going to start giving out homework. You do the candle in the window, Trisha. Lovely. They when Mary Robinson, who was the first president of Ireland, who was a woman, she instituted doing the candle in the window in the home of the president of Ireland, Áras an Uachtaráin, which is in Phoenix Park in Dublin, and she wanted to acknowledge the Irish diaspora with it, that the immigrants are welcome. So it's a nice thing, I think. Sorry, I can't hear you say that again. You're a bit low. Someone trying to say something?
Well, I'd like to ask something is, I
Go
guess I'm
ahead.
surprised that you have Santa Claus in Ireland. It's not Father Christmas then.
Oh no, that's a British thing.
Okay.
Oh God, no, that's definitely, that's just a British thing, I think. Father Christmas. It's such a weird phrase, don't you think? He's got lots of names in different countries, but we've always said Santa Claus.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, it's very common in Ireland to just abbreviate it to Santy in Ireland. That's what I would remember saying as a child. Santy's coming tonight.
Okay.
Anyone else got anything to add? Pauline, you've got your mic on. Do you want to say something?
No, no, I was just listening.
Very good. Well, I hope I've given you some ideas. Valerie says, growing up, my church had mass at midnight, and just this year you've started the tradition again. Oh, that's lovely. And at actual midnight, that's quite late, isn't it? I mean, I think that they continued, they sort of brought it backwards so that children could attend successfully and then get them all home to bed early. So it's quite common that people would do that in Ireland, and it's a little bit of a sort of a sop to the modern era, like, oh, I don't want to have to go to mass on Christmas Day, so we'll just get it over and done with on Christmas Eve. I think, and of course, there's plenty of people in Ireland now who wouldn't ever have the religious element to Christmas. It's also an entirely cultural festival in Ireland too. Yeah, I mean, my favorite of all of those is Nollaig na mBan. I think that's quite unique to Ireland, and it has had a bit of a resurgence in the 21st century. I don't remember it being so prevalent as a child, but certainly now you would definitely be marking it. You would be wishing other women in your life a happy Nollaig na mBan, and so on. So that would be something that is quite the Wren Boys as well is it's very odd, isn't it? I've never actually witnessed it myself in real life. I've seen it on they report it on the news and things like that. Well, not like individual ones, but they'll have some footage from somewhere around the country where there was a bit of a Wren parade that day, on St. Stephen's Day.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I can wait. Go ahead.
Colleen first.
Yeah, Colleen, go ahead.
I was just wondering, with the church, would they take, I guess, attendance? Would that be a good way to possibly do research to see if you're...
They wouldn't. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? If they recorded the times everyone went to mass. I mean, certainly there would be an element of checking that people did go to mass in the past, and it being commented upon. If you didn't, you'd have to be sick really to get away with it. But no, they never took attendance at mass, unfortunately. There's never been any sort of I suppose that would put people off, maybe.
Maybe
from a church perspective, they want you to come. So the idea that you might get in trouble if you were missing for several weeks in a row or something, I could imagine that would be quite off-putting. You've just made me think that'd be an amazing resource. I wish that existed.
I just thought, because they would be collecting more money at Christmas time, right? Well,
they do. No, they do. Churches do send around sort of envelopes that they just sort of speculatively put in everyone's door at Christmas in the parish, and remind them. people they do take collections at the services as well, and people would be more generous at Christmas, absolutely. So, but I mean, I would imagine today that they might keep records of larger donations because they can claim additional tax breaks and so on if somebody gives them above a certain amount. But no, in general, they wouldn't be recording that. They might, sometimes in the past, they did record things in the newspaper if there was a collection for something. They would make notes about so and so gave this much money as a bit of a show off.
Right.
So you do, and when the famine was on, there was a famine relief commission, and sadly they were not as effective as their ideals. But there's a small collection on Ancestry, and it's free to look at. And they did sort of have names and people who gave amounts in the famine relief records. So and it's all but the names of the people are all the sort of local bigwigs who were absolutely not the people who were starving. You know, the bishop of so and so will have given this much money, or Lord X gave this amount of money, but it doesn't have lots of, you know, names of and then we gave, you know, 3 pence of this money to this person here. It doesn't have that level of detail, sadly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, you go with your other one now.
I was going to ask about Christmas trees. So did that custom develop
Yes.
later, like it did mostly elsewhere?
It would have come at the same time as it did in Britain, or maybe a little bit later. So Prince Albert, who was the husband of Queen Victoria, was German, and he brought the first Christmas trees to Britain because it was already a thing in Germany. And so it would have come to us a little bit after that, but Christmas trees, yeah, very much in the 20th century, absolutely ubiquitous. I haven't seen a huge amount of evidence, but it's not the sort of thing that you see. You have to find, you know, diaries and letters for that sort of thing. You know, it's not something that's so easy to see in the genealogical records that we would be looking at on a regular basis. But no, certainly there would be Christmas trees, and completely standard at this point to have them. But I don't know. If I had to guess, I would say in the 1850s when we start to see them. But I mean, we have trees in Ireland that grow that look like Christmas trees. So they're, you know, and then in more recent eras, we have started to grow them specifically. But there's still plenty of people who wouldn't have one, and that would mainly just be on a space reason, you know, that they wouldn't, but you see them everywhere, absolutely. I
Okay,
love the smell
thanks.
of real ones.
Mhm.
All right, so that's it for the year. Thank you very much for coming to my classes during the year. We will be back in January. As always, if anyone has any ideas for classes that they would like to hear me talk about a particular topic, you can always drop me a line. I'm going to stick my email into the chat. I think you probably all have it, but I'll just put it in anyway. And we will be back in the new year. I haven't got the date to hand for January, but it'll be on the student calendar. And I will be back this same time next week, same time, same back channel, etc. for the last DNA class of the year. I'm going to do a year in review type class, where I'll talk about what DNA advancements there have been this year and whether they were good or bad and so on. So I hope to see some of you there, and if not, if you celebrated, I wish you a very happy Christmas and a happy New Year.
Same to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.